Hi everyone, this video is a very special book review. It is a book about a famous historical figure who made a lot of changes during his lifetime and also caused a lot of controversies while he was walking this planet Earth. And the title of this book is Martin Luther King Jr., A King Family Tribute, and it was edited by his niece, Angela Ferris Watkins, PhD, and it also contains a foreword by Andrew Young. Now, as I stated, Martin Luther King Jr. was a very famous and also controversial figure during his lifetime. People either believed in what he stood for or disagreed with what he stood for. Some people from his own community criticized him and his methods, and others just joined in on all of the things that he was discussing. I have been observing Martin Luther King Jr. Day since I was a small child. Every year I would go to the Martin Luther King Jr. parade downtown St. Louis, and I've basically slowed down on going. I went last year, but I hadn't been in maybe 10 years. I also have all of my little buttons that I've collected over the course of the years. This isn't all of them. I actually had more. I had this one from, I don't know when this was at. It was like Martin Luther King. They'd be selling them. And I would make a poster. This one's from 2004. 2006. This one is from 2020. And this one is Coretta Scott King when she died in 2006. So my mindset on Dr. King and his philosophies have transformed over the years. I don't think with the same mindset as I did as a child, now that I have a better understanding of history and of the historical figures that I was taught about as a youth. I also wanted to dedicate this video to my friend who is not on this earth with us any longer. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday is actually the 1-year anniversary of my friend's unaliving. I knew him as a child. We lost contact over the course of the years, but I just wanted to dedicate this video to him because he loved learning about Black history. He would write poetry, and he had a very, very sweet heart. So he didn't have to, go out like that in such a cruel and malicious way. But I feel that his story and the stories of other people that are experiencing this also fall into alignment with some of the things Dr. King was focusing on at the end of his career in his life. He was focusing on poverty. He was focusing on community building. There's a lot of things that he wanted to make a change in, and that we still can make a change in this day. So I'm going to incorporate that into the video too. But before I get into all of the little details, let me share with you a little bit about the author, Angela Ferris Watkins. Now, this book was published in 2012, so it's been 12 years. This may not be a recent bio, but it's recent enough. Angela Ferris Watkins, PhD, is the niece of Martin Luther King Jr. She is an associate professor of psychology at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. Watkins is a certified trainer of Kingian, I don't know if it's Kingian or Kingian, nonviolence, the principles and steps of social change espoused by her uncle, and she is the author of 2 children's books, My Uncle Martin's Words for America and My Uncle Martin's Big Heart. Now, I did do a book review on My Uncle Martin's Big Heart in it was either 2017 or 2018 that I did this book review, and it's a children's book. I really liked it. The only thing I did not like was that the illustrator aged Angela. And he made her a little bit older than she actually was, and she was pretty small when she was hanging out with her uncle, but he made her a little bit older. This is a photograph of Angela from 2012. I'm assuming this is her. And this is her when she was a little girl with her uncle. It says Martin Luther King holding his niece Angela Ferris. This book essentially contains photographs of Dr. King and his other family members. It has family members that are no longer with us, and it also has his descendants. No, not it has photos of his direct descendants, but it also has his nieces and nephews and their children and children's children. And it was really inspiring to read about all of these different people, because it seemed like everyone in that family was doing something productive, whether it was going into a completely different career field, or going into the ministry, or pursuing a career related to nonviolence, or Dr. King's legacy. It was a very inspiring family. It makes me realize once more how important it is to have healthy families, and how healthy families will build healthy nations and a healthy society. So, we're going to start off. Oh, another thing I was really loved was whenever I would look at some of the pictures, I could see the family resemblance down the line. It was really cute. It says, in these pages, you will experience the love and the struggle that surrounded Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as he developed into a leader of a movement committed to a just society for all people. The personal reflections of family and friends featured here attest to the power of peace and harmony that he expressed. So chapter 1 is Born for This, and it was written by Martin Luther King Sr., which is his father. Posthumous, bio or posthumous memory of Dr. King. This is Dr. King when he was 6 years old. So cute. His little ears. You'll hear in some of these accounts that he was called ML. That was his family nickname, was ML. Everybody has their own little family nickname. My family nickname is KR on one side of the family. It's because my great-grandmother couldn't pronounce Kiara, so they're like KR. So that's my family nickname. And his was ML. It says, Martin Luther King Jr. was born into a family of leaders and change agents who nurtured him in a spirit of love and expected him to continue their legacy of social justice. So, his father talked about taking Dr. King downtown as a child to go get some shoes, and it said, ML spotted a pair of shoes in a window and asked me to buy them. Well, he needed a pair, and so we went inside the store where the shoes he liked so much were displayed. A clerk appeared as soon as we stepped past the door and very coldly announced that we should go to the back of the store where he'd help us in a few minutes. I told him we were quite comfortable in the front of the store, and if he didn't want to sell us any shoes there, we wouldn't be buying any. Literally, that's how I feel. Like, if you're not about to sell me some shoes, I'm not buying from you anymore. If you're going to treat me like I'm just not well to be here or good enough to be here, then I'm just going to leave. I had that experience, like, what was it, a month or two ago, where I went to a grocery store and they accused me of stealing, even though I've never stolen in my life. And then they had the nerve to send me a gift card, yet I still have not stepped one foot in any of their locations, and I have yet to use that gift card. Because that's how mad I am. So I understand why his dad was mad. ML stared at me in the car and asked me to explain the whole thing again. It says, this was the ridiculous nature of segregation in the South. A grown man could make no sense of it to a very bright 6-year-old boy. ML just couldn't understand why it was all right to buy shoes in the back of the store and not in the front. He said, and I said to him that the best way to explain it was to say that I'd never accept the stupidity and cruelty of segregation, not as long as I lived. I was going to be fighting against it in some way or the other as long as there was breath in me. I wanted him to understand that. He still looked puzzled, but he nodded his head and told me that if I was against it, he would help me all he could, and I remember smiling and telling him how much I appreciated his support. It's so sad what some of these parents had to go through with their children as far as segregation and integration. Some of the stories, I don't know how they did it. For example, Ruby Bridges' parents. They sent her off to a school to desegregate a school. I guess she's the only black child in that school. I'd be too afraid to send my child anywhere. I can't see what's happening to the child. She's alone in a building. What's going to happen? Anything could happen. They say it's an accident. So they must have had such strength and faith in God or something in order to send their child to such an environment and keep sending her there. Because as soon as I see a baby doll in a coffin, you're not going anywhere near that school. But that's just me personally. I don't trust people like that. I literally don't. But sacrifices like that were made. This is a photograph of Dr. King's grandmother and his grandfather. I believe it's his mother's mother and his mother's father. I can see his grandmother. His mother looks like his grandmother. I think that's where they got the eyes. Like his grandmother, one of them got the eyes. I wonder if he's blind. Or maybe he's just squinting. His grandfather was also a reverend, so all of these reverends run in the family. His preaching was rich with spirit and power. He could move people with great rolling thunder in his voice. This is still his father talking about him. The words moving smoothly from him and reaching people with the enormous conviction that all speakers who can move masses of human beings bring to the simplest sentence. He was becoming a national leader because it was time for this to happen, and time, of course, for it to happen to Martin Luther King Jr. This is excerpted from Daddy King, an autobiography written in 1980. I believe his father passed in 1986. This is his father's father. Oh, you look sharp. And this is his father. Don't quote me on this, but I believe they may have called his father Daddy King. Daddy King. They also changed her name to added Luther. Because I think his name was Michael. Dr. King was born as Michael, and it changed to Martin and Luther after, I think, was it Luther? I cannot remember. I literally cannot remember. The 95 thesis. In Germany somewhere. Don't quote me on that. I'm tired. But their family was centered around their belief system. And even as I read these later bios of even the younger children, you can still see the influence of the church in this family, which I think is pretty cool. Even though I'm not super religious at all, or religious in general, I like that. It's a family tradition. And you can also see the closeness of the family throughout these photographs. But right here is Dr. King's father, Martin Luther King Sr., or Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. This is his mother, Alberta. This is Alberta Williams King. This is his sister, Christine. And this is his brother, Alfred. So, Dr. King's mother, she also was involved in, activism. Unfortunately, she was unalived in church while playing the organ. Alfred, I don't know how they're trying to pass off his unaliving, but he was found in a pool, which makes no sense, but okay. Christine was the longest living person in this picture. Christine actually passed away last year in June. She was about 95 years old. I thought that was pretty cool. She lived a very long life. His sister. And he was also very close with his sister as well. Chapter 2, Reflection of a Mother's Love. Alberta Williams King. Martin Jr. with his mother Alberta Williams King in the backyard of his parents' Northwest Atlanta home. I really like this dress on her. She actually, she reminds me of my great-grandmother Lavinia. I don't know if it's the body type or the way she stands, but just looking at his mother reminds me of my great-grandmother, who was also involved heavily in the church. Letter from Martin Jr. to Alberta Williams King, October 1948. In October 1948, just after Martin Luther King Jr. entered Crozer Theological Seminary, he wrote to his mother in response to a letter that she had written to him. Their closeness is apparent in the subjects he discusses with her. So he says, Dear Mother, your letter was received this morning. I often tell the boys around the campus I have the best mother in the world. You will never know how I appreciate the many kind things you and Daddy are doing for me. So far I've gotten the money, $5 every week. It says, let me see. I hope you will explain to the members why I haven't written any of them. I'm going to write a letter to the entire church next week. It should be there by first Sunday. I hear from Christine every week. I try to answer as regularly as possible. It was just like, son writing to his mother. These two photographs I really like. It's just beautiful family. This is his mother, Alberta. This is his daddy. This one, I think, is Alberta's mother. It's Alberta's mother. Hold up. Alfred. Okay, yeah. This is Alberta's mother. The eyes. And then these are the children. There's Martin Luther King. Oh, shoot. There's Martin Luther King Jr., Christine, and Alfred. Yeah, Alfred. Then this is when they're older. This one is Expressions from a Loving Sister, Christine King Ferris. This is pictures of when Dr. King and Christine were toddlers, very little. This was probably one of the youngest pictures of him. Actually, this may be one of the youngest pictures of him as a baby. And she has a lot written because I know she was still alive at the time. And she lived long enough to see the monument that they had made of her brother. There's a picture in here where they lifted her up and brought her to the eye level of the Statue of Hope. I think that's so beautiful. The only surviving member of the household into which Martin Luther King Jr. was born reflects on what it was like growing up with him. She said, Martin and I had a normal brother-sister relationship with lots of affection. As youngsters, we sometimes gave each other a hard time, like brothers and sisters everywhere. I remember, for example, Martin and our brother A.D. pulling the heads off my dolls to aggravate me. But the teasing and mischief rarely got out of hand because our father and mother ran a pretty tight ship. But we were very close. Martin said he decided to be baptized after he saw me being baptized. And even as we grew into teenagers, we shared many of our confidences, hopes, and dreams for the future. Then Martin wanted to go to school because Christine was at school, but he had to be 6 years old. So the only reason he got sent back home was because the teacher overheard that he had celebrated a birthday and there were 5 candles on his cake, so he had to go home. Little children. Martin was already a truth seeker by the time he went to college at the age of 15. He enjoyed his social life at Morehouse and later at Crozer Theological Seminary and then Boston University. He was a good dancer and a snappy dresser who liked a good party as much of any of his fellow students. I can't remember which of his peers said that Martin Luther King, I don't know if it was Andrew Young or it was somebody. Somebody said, as far as his personality, he was more like a comedian, almost similar to Eddie Murphy. I'll never forget that. I was like, Eddie Murphy, Martin Luther King, okay. But that's one thing I remember. So this kind of lines up with what she was talking about. Even though he was just like very playful, he seemed to be a deep thinker. I don't know if I've already said this already, but I feel he was thrown into the civil rights movement. I feel he could have stayed a pastor, but maybe he would have gotten bored with it. But essentially, like when I reflect on his life, I feel like he just got, kind of pulled into the movement, or you get pushed into a movement you don't even know you're in, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's out of your hands. Now, one thing, even though there were certain tactics I didn't agree with of him, one thing I can say for sure is if somebody had tried to blow up my house and I got stabbed and I'm still in the movement, I would be in this movement. As soon as you stab me, I'm gone. As soon as I see a little fire in my house, I am gone. I'm not about to have my phone tapped. I'm not about to be threatened. I'm not about to be out there. I'm gone. I don't care anymore. But one thing I do admire about him is he stayed there. He knew he could have been unalived, and he was. He knew he had some snakes among him, but he still stayed. So I can't, as far as my criticisms go, I could never do that. I don't love the community that much. I can't give my life for the community because I know they won't finish my work. Certain people just have that drive and force and soul to truly believe in people like that. And I think he was one of them, because you can't go through all of that and still be fighting for people. That is true dedication that a lot of people aren't willing to do, including me. And I know that I just know myself. I know what I will and will not do, and I will not do that. But he did. And that's why I will always admire him. No matter how many criticisms of him I have or what he did or didn't do, I will tell you one thing. He knew what was coming and he still stayed, so I admire him for that. She said, and he was very intelligent. So intelligent. You going to college at 15, following in the footsteps, such a great speaker. There's still people that try to emulate how Dr. King speaks to this very day. I know one man who does it. He even brought MLK into one of his speeches, and so he's like, I'm the MLK of, and I'm like, boy, sit down. Okay. It says, my brother did not consciously plan to be a great civil rights leader. In fact, you could say he was drafted into that role when he was elected president of the Montgomery Improvement Association in 1955. Oh, well, there you go. And that's what I said earlier. I would like everyone to understand that Martin Luther King Jr. was a man of action, a leader who was determined not only to win freedom for his people, but to win freedom not with violence, not with threats, but with love. Unconditional love for all people, accepting them just as they are, respecting their personhood, even if you deplore their behavior. He believed that every person, no matter how misguided, is a child of God and deserves your respect and your compassion. So, as I showed you earlier, the pictures of them as children. He was just so cute. Then, this one is a posthumous account from his brother, Alfred. Beloved brothers. Listen. Look at them. I see you. Acting cool. Alfred Daniel and Martin Jr. relaxing against Martin Jr.'s car. This is them as children. It says, Martin Luther King Jr. believed in nonviolence. He did love his neighbor as himself. Because he was mortal, this belief was not a gift. It was a philosophy which grew from study, self-discipline, and prayer. As he achieved this way of life, so can I, and so can we all. His brother was a reverend too, I suppose. It says an excerpt from a press statement shortly after the unaliving of Martin Luther King Jr. You can see the eyes. It's like I see the family resemblance. Yeah, I see it. Then there was it? Hold on. This is memories of a college classmate, Samuel Dubois Cook, Morehouse College student. It doesn't show a picture of him, but this is who he went to college with. Now, this one really stood out to me because this was the only mention of, like, rumors. ML is what we generally called him during our student days at Morehouse, largely because of his abundant oratorical gifts and intellect. ML was selected to deliver the senior class sermon in June of 1948. As expected, he soared and stood tall. I hope somebody finds that speech. Unless I can find it in a book or online. Hopefully somebody will get it. I shall never forget one of his compelling and prophetic points. He asserted that there are moral laws in the universe that we cannot ignore without serious consequences, just as there are physical laws in the universe. He thus affirmed by implication the unity and continuity of means and ends, the way and the goal. Fully developed later, the idea became a central part of ML's ethical, social, and political vision and philosophy. As I'm reading more and more about Martin Luther King, I'm wondering if his religious views weren't exactly Baptists. Because I know he use the tactics of Gandhi, who, like, he found out some dirt on Gandhi too and how Gandhi felt about black people, but like, I don't really know, because the more I read, I said, this man, I don't think he was entirely Baptist, but that's just me personally. Don't come for me. But I feel he kept his true religious stance private. It seems almost very, I'm going to say non-denominational just to be safe. Yeah, I'm going to say that one. I recall a fond memory. Hold on. Okay. As ML became a very visible and noted leader of the civil rights, there were many rumors and attacks surrounding him. Once a citizen of our community who knew my close relations with ML mentioned to me that there was a particular rumor about ML. The man suggested that I speak with ML about this. I was very angry that there were such attempts to destroy his credibility and image. It happened that I ran into ML the next day at a meeting. I pulled him aside and mentioned what had been told to me. I explained that I thought people were trying to destroy him and that something should be done about this. He responded with such calmness. He assured me that it was truly a rumor and everything would be all right. I wonder what it was. Because I've heard rumors. I actually believe some of the rumors, but that's mostly because when I look at historical figures, I just look at them as humans. I don't look at them as people we place on pedestals. When I look at events in history, I just try to see it how it is. I may not like it or I may like it, but it is what it is. I can't change history. I can't change people's actions. I can't change how they are. Just because I have an idea of how somebody is doesn't mean that's how they actually are. Because we are human beings, we have facets of ourselves. We're like a diamond. There's a cut this way, there's a cut that way, there's a shine that way, and a shine that way. We're going to sparkle in different ways, okay? So when I read about this, I'm actually glad he put that in there because it makes him more human. I feel Martin Luther King probably wouldn't have liked how people portray him now. Like, they've elevated him to almost a deity-like level and feel that they can't replicate what he has done, when essentially people are placing all of these tasks on one person instead of bringing up the effort inside of them to, just because this person is gone doesn't mean everything has to fall apart. Does that make any sense? It's like a mother running a household and she leaves for 2 days for vacation and then she comes back and everything's falling apart. Like, the dishes are dirty and all of that. Like, that's how I feel about his movement. I feel that if we are going to replicate what he tried to do, we have to take some type of accountability. We have to stop placing deity levels on a human being. Nobody is perfect, if that makes any sense. Nobody is perfect. Like, another historical figure I feel like do that for is Kennedy. Like, come on now. Kennedy had Marilyn. Kennedy had all these actresses, but nobody was like, oh, well, Kennedy, they're just gonna gloss over the womanizing. But if we just see these people as human beings and just see the core of what they did, I think we can move forward. I think the reason we haven't truly moved forward is people are intimidated. People are intimidated by what he did and accomplished. I think they're still intimidated by how he could get organize people and how he could get other people to organize people, that's a lot for one person. So I see why he had the heart of a 60-year-old man at almost 40 years old. That's a lot of stress to place on one person. Some of the accounts in here from his relatives, they'd be like, oh, he's asleep, or he came from this trip and nobody wanted us to bother him because he was asleep. That is a lot. I would be sleeping too. I'd be blacked out on the airplane. For real. So whether the rumors were true or not true, I personally think some of them were true. It still doesn't change my respect for him and what he did as a person and a leader. I don't put him to this elevated high position. I just see him as a man that did what he needed to do in the best way that he could, and he wasn't perfect. Just like I'm not perfect and that person isn't perfect. But I'm just glad they put this in there. It says, extending the King family. Naomi's sister, Naomi King, and Isaac Ferris Sr. So, Naomi was Alfred's wife, and Isaac was, I think, Christine's husband, if I'm not mistaken. Christine, that's his brother-in-law. This is the wedding of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King. Their honeymoon night was spent in a funeral home, I heard. But I like this. Like this is Christine. I believe this is Naomi. Is this Naomi? Naomi had such a sweet little face. No. Okay. No, wait, hold up. I'm tripping. Naomi is over here. It says, pictured left to right, Christine, Alfred, Betty Ann Hill, Martin, Naomi. This was Naomi. She's just being blocked. That was Alfred's wife. And then over here is Coretta Scott King's mother. And I believe this is her father. This is Martin Luther King's mother. That's Daddy King. I think this is Coretta Scott King's sister. But it's a beautiful wedding. That's why I like this Coretta Scott King button. She was one of the people that advocated to get Dr. King's birthday or his legacy made into a holiday, and it came to pass. I like this picture of them. It looks like Gandhi. It looks like a black Virgin Mary. Coretta Scott King was very talented. She actually was in a conservatory school, I think, and she could sing very well. There was one footage of her singing, operatic singing. There is also a beautiful picture of her singing. It's so gorgeous. I'm going to have to post it here. That picture is gorgeous. She looks so eloquent and elegant, like a professional opera singer. Then this one, Yolanda King. Hold on. Oops. Yolanda King was Dr. King's daughter. They called her Yoki. She was his first child with Coretta Scott King. She says, our father was a king, not the kind you bowed down to, a king who fought for justice with the shield of prayer and the sword of nonviolence, one who stood up for millions of men, women, and children, not the kind who wore a crown, but one who crowned a movement. So this is her, Yoki. And the reason that there's such a shortness of what she said is because she passed away a year after her mother passed away. Her mom died in 2006 and she died in 2007. She she did acting. Used to do theater, and after her father's death, she did collaborate with a lot of people to keep his legacy alive. One thing that I did agree with was she didn't like people simply resting on his day. She wanted it to be a day of action, and that one I do agree with. Because she didn't like people just saying, "Oh, it's off day." It's like, don't sit there and do nothing. Do something. She and her mother truly worked to keep Dr. King's legacy alive. She did something with Malcolm X's daughter. I believe they collaborated on, I can't remember what it was they collaborated on. Her and her mother were advocates for LGBTQ rights, which I didn't know until I found out reading. But she was a very interesting person. The first time I had found out about her death was, of course, in 2007. And my mother had a photograph of her at her funeral. I think my mother's friend gave it to her. She looked so beautiful. She didn't have a coffin. She just had a fainting chair, and she had on these heels and pearls. Very, very beautiful lady. But that was his daughter, and his other children went into, I guess, a similar path as he did. Bernice. Bernice was his youngest. Bernice. He had Bernice. No, Yoki. I'm gonna say Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King the Third. Dexter Scott, and Bernice. This is Naomi. I believe Naomi is still alive, if I'm not mistaken. I think she's still alive. So pretty. I just love her. Okay, this is one of my favorite pictures of this book. It says King Family Branches. Look, this is just so cute. But this girl right here, Alvita, I had to find out more about her because I just could not. With that cute little face, it's so cute. She's still cute. I actually found a picture of her older, and she still has that same beautiful smile. This is her. Look at her. She has some type of ministry. I searched on her website trying to find out more information about her. I would say she's kind of controversial too, for real. Just based off of some of the books that she had on there that she had written, I was like, okay, this is intense. But all right. But this is her and her grandchildren and children, and she still has that same little smile. She's a minister as well. Who else? Okay. There's another one. Let's see what Angela says, because I have to read it as her book. She says, I was very young when I knew my dear Uncle ML, as we affectionately called him, but the delight that I felt when he was around glows as brightly today as it did back then. I remember the times I saw him. He was always very playful, and I remember him as somewhat of an adult playmate for me. His smile and laughter were very amusing. I remember seeing him in our church, Ebenezer Baptist Church, on Sunday morning after worship service, and how he would pick me up and give me a kiss and a hug. I have seen the telegram he sent to my mother and his sister. or his sister, when I was born, congratulating her on my birth and welcoming me into the world. She actually put that in her book, My Uncle Martin's Big Heart. When I look at the pictures of him holding me and playing with me, I remember what it was like, seeing him and being comforted by his joy. She also started the Kingian psychology. Hold on. The Kingian nonviolence trainings. But she doesn't go into how, like, I have to look online to figure out, like, what are the templates of the Kingian nonviolence training. I am so proud to call him my uncle for all that he was to so many people. I see him now as I did when I was young, standing really, really tall. I am remembering his fondness for me, as well as his commitment to America in the children's books I write, to make sure that generations of children understand what he did. I am remembering him in the college courses that I teach, to make sure that budding young psychologists understand his school of thought and his winning principles. She has a daughter named Ferris Christine, and I only found one YouTube channel of Ferris Christine. She was singing. I guess she's a professional singer now, or she did singing in the past. So then this story in here, which was his pupil. This is Martin Luther King Jr., Albert Paul Brinson, that's him. And Dr. King encouraged Albert to go into ministry. In the spring of 1963, an Atlanta public schools colored teacher, I found myself in Birmingham, Alabama, with Reverend King Sr. during Holy Week, leading up to Easter Sunday. This was the time of the water hoses and dogs. It was an experience I will never forget, a life-changing experience. I knew that there was something pulling on me. It had been for quite some time, and I knew what it was. It was what I had heard almost all of the time, the call to ministry. I was hearing God calling me to the Christian ministry. I was literally terrified. I did not want to be a preacher. I certainly did not see myself as a person who was good enough to fill such a role and lifestyle. My wife of 3 years had not married a minister. It was clear to me that I did not know what to do with my overpowering feelings. I kind of relate to that because I remember as a teenager, I had a pastor. No, it wasn't my pastor, but he was a Unitarian minister. He was either Unitarian minister of Disciples of Christ or United Church of Christ. I don't know. But I met him on Ballas Road because I would have choir practice on Ballas Road, and across the street was a church. So the minister drove me and my mother somewhere. I don't know where we were driving to. He was dropping us off somewhere, and he asked me, did I ever think about going to seminary school? And I laughed because I thought it was so funny. So I really wasn't that super religious, and I never envisioned myself as a pastor. But it wasn't until my 20s when I actually had an internship at a seminary school that I realized he may have been right. And it has been a thought that has crossed my mind over the course of the years, but I don't know what I would do with it. I wouldn't start a church in a brick and mortar building. I don't even know what branch I would be doing. I'd probably start some divine science church outside, for real. Maybe some universalism, religious science church. and nobody would wear shoes and be outside. We would just eat food like that. That's what I would do. So I understand this guy feeling that call, because sometimes you'll feel the calling, you don't know what it is, and you don't know what to do with it because you feel you're not worthy of doing anything with it. You have this idea in your mind of what that person is supposed to be like, and you don't envision it as you. So they got him to ML, or Dr. King, and he was on the trip. After some conversation about his trip, I told him that I had something very important to talk with him about, not really knowing how to begin the conversation. Without hesitation, he interrupted me with a smile, saying, "I know what you want to talk about. It's no surprise with me. You're dealing with your call to ministry." We began a conversation that lasted until after midnight. I told him of how frightened and unworthy I felt to even approach the conversation about me as a preacher or minister. I felt that I wasn't good enough. He looked at me and spoke about myself, assuring that we are never good enough. He said God uses us in spite of ourselves, never because we are worthy. I was still in a state of shock, but we talked about what I would do. The first thing was to resign my teaching position at the end of the semester. And that's what happened. They sent him out. He resigned from being a teacher, and they sent him to preach, and he's been preaching ever since. That is so cool. Yep, Ebenezer Baptist Church. Yep. This right here is Angela Ferris Watkins' daughter when she was little. I think she's in her 20s now. She's either in her 20s or 30s, but I'm thinking she's in her 20s. That's her with former President Barack Obama. She said, "Dear Uncle ML, I never had the chance or privilege of meeting you, but my family has told me so many stories about you that I feel like I do know you. It started with different people telling me how you changed their lives and made a difference for my generation and others unborn. Then it was my grandmother Christine King Ferris and her book that let me know that not only were you a civil rights giant, you were a kid like me who loved to play and joke around with your sister and brother. When I found out that a monument was going to be built for you on the mall in Washington, D.C., I wasn't surprised at all. Actually, I was trying to figure out why this hadn't been done before. No, for real though. Why did it take so long? You need to build one of Harriet Tubman. If they haven't, they need to. But I soon realized that everything has a time and place. Uncle ML, this is your time to be celebrated, not because of the difference you made in everybody's life, but because you died working and trying to save our country. You knew that for your dream to come true, you would have to have as much help that was bigger than any person on earth. Because of your faith, belief, and persistence, you deserve the honor, Uncle ML, your great niece." Then it says, "A salute from America, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Memorial." I've never been to Washington, D.C. I have it on my list to go just to see. That was really all I'm. I don't even have this like urging desire to go, but I feel I should go. I just feel I should go visit it, and I do want to see this memorial because I remember when they first started it and having it finish, and that was one thing I wanted to see. This one is his family standing in front of there. You see that older lady? That's his sister, Christine. And this is the picture I showed you earlier of her looking at him. This right here, let's see. I wonder why they're wearing construction uniforms. Did they do groundbreaking or something? Yeah. Interesting. And finally, In the back, it says the contributors, and it has his family members and their bios. Some of them are not here with us anymore. Others are still with us. There's the young and the old. Let me see. What else? There were the young people. Yep. Special thanks to the following individuals for their inspiration, encouragement, and invaluable assistance on this project: Isaac Ferris Sr., Christine King Ferris, Jennifer Lyons, Apostle Daryl Winston, Alveda King, Carrie Wynn II, and Richard Duke-Reed. And on the back is just this beautiful family. So beautiful. But yeah. There's still a lot of work to be done as far as building more communities. We all have to take some type of initiative. I really hope that soon or someday there will also be more focus on poverty, because poverty does cause a lot of issues. I was just thinking about that earlier when I was reading this book. As I was reading this book, this was a couple of hours ago, there were so many gunshots outside. I think it happened across the street because the police came and they were picking up like bullets or something off the ground. But all in this area in the past few weeks, there's been all these unalivings 4 minutes from me, another's that all down the street and over there. And I know it has to do with poverty most of the time. Not saying violence doesn't happen where there isn't poverty, but poverty breeds hopelessness. It breeds like, there is not enough for me, so I have to take for you. You're not my neighbor. You're my enemy. And Dr. King didn't like to sugarcoat certain issues most of the time. That's why he said at the end of his life, he's like, I believe I've brought my people into a burning house. Which essentially was true. He did what others would not do. He had a lot of shady people in his life, and he had a lot of devoted people in his life. I feel he was a human being that lived up to his fullest potential in the way that he knew how, whether we liked it or not. Some people cannot be in those positions because they care about what other people think. They care about their own personal safety, like me. And they just don't have the passion for that vision. He is one of those people that's just one of a kind. A lot of people have passion as a child or as a teenager, but it's rare when you see someone who will go that far with their passion in adulthood and never waver. I'm just very impressed with that. So I hope that you enjoyed this book review video and that you liked looking at these various pictures. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Rest in peace to my friend in heaven, living it up, playing his, I think he played the drums. He was just a very fun guy. But I hope we all become better people and promote more peace in the world and make changes. It doesn't have to be a global change, but a personal change within ourselves. If we can make our own personal change, there will be a global change for everyone around us. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day, everyone. And talk to you later. Happy reading.